The night was quiet in Los Angeles, but inside a small apartment, a young director named Liam sat at his desk staring at a script that no one wanted to read. His hands trembled slightly as he held the worn stack of pages. He had worked for years on this story, pouring in his dreams, his fears, and everything he had learned about life. But every studio he approached told him the same thing. It is too risky, it is too emotional, it will not sell. He felt the weight of rejection pressing down on him like a heavy stone. The rent was overdue, the phone bills stacked on the corner table, and the fridge held little more than a carton of milk and some bread. His parents had already told him to think about a safer career, something with stability. But deep inside, Liam could not let go of the belief that stories had the power to change lives. He wanted to make films that touched people. Films that gave hope when everything else seemed lost. On that evening, as the city lights glowed outside his window, Liam closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "Just one chance. I only need one person to believe." Little did he know, fate was already moving quietly in the background. The next day, Liam received an invitation he almost thought was a mistake. A friend from film school had gotten him a pass to a small charity event. It was not glamorous, not the kind of event where big producers and powerful names gathered, but it was a place where actors and storytellers came together to support children's education. Liam hesitated. He had no money for a new suit, no confidence left in his voice, but something inside him pushed him to go. When he arrived at the venue, he kept to the side of the room, feeling out of place among people who seemed so certain of themselves. Laughter and conversations filled the air, but Liam felt invisible. Then, as he turned to leave, something unexpected happened. A voice, calm and gentle, spoke behind him. "You look like you're carrying a whole world on your shoulders." Liam turned, and for a moment, he could not believe his eyes. Standing there, with a kind smile and an unshaken calmness, was Keanu Reeves. The same actor he had admired since childhood. The one who had faced loss, hardship, and yet always treated people with kindness. Liam froze, words caught in his throat, but Keanu did not rush him. Instead, he simply extended his hand and said, "Hi, I'm Keanu." It was such a simple introduction, but for Liam it felt like the ground beneath him shifted. They spoke for a while, not about Hollywood, not about fame, but about life. Keanu listened as if every word Liam said mattered. When Liam mentioned his script, he did not expect more than polite interest. Yet Keanu leaned in and asked, "What's the story about?" Liam hesitated. He had practiced the pitch many times, but always in rooms where people cut him off halfway through. This time, he told the truth. He spoke of loss and healing, of a boy searching for his father, of the strength found in forgiveness. His voice shook, but his eyes burned with the fire of someone who still believed, even after so many closed doors. When he finished, there was silence. Liam lowered his head, sure he had said too much. But then Keanu nodded slowly and said, "That sounds honest. Honesty is rare. Don't lose it." Liam's chest tightened, not from fear but from the sudden rush of hope. Keanu's words felt different. They carried weight, like a quiet promise. Before leaving, Keanu placed a hand on Liam's shoulder and said something Liam would never forget. "Sometimes the world will try to convince you that your story does not matter. Don't let them. If you believe, then keep going." That night, Liam walked home with no deal, no contract, but with something far greater. He carried the memory of kindness. For the first time in months, he slept peacefully, his heart filled with a fragile but powerful belief. Maybe one meeting could change everything. What Liam did not know was that this small exchange was only the beginning. Doors that had once been locked tight were about to open in ways he could never have imagined. The simple kindness of one man would soon become the spark that lit his entire future. The morning after meeting Keanu, Liam woke with a strange mixture of peace and fear. Peace because someone he admired deeply had given him words that felt like sunlight after a long storm. Fear because he wondered if it had all been a fleeting moment, something that would fade once the noise of the real world returned. He walked to his desk where his script lay waiting. He stared at the pages as though seeing them for the first time. For months he had avoided touching it, afraid of facing yet another rejection. But now, something was different. Keanu's words echoed in his mind. Don't let them convince you your story does not matter. With trembling hands, Liam began to read aloud from the first page. His own words filled the small room, fragile but alive. He read through the night until his voice grew hoarse. By the time the sun rose, Liam realized he had found something he thought was lost: faith in his own story. Still, faith alone was not enough. He needed an opportunity, a doorway into a world that had kept him on the outside for so long. And opportunities never came easy. A week later, Liam was at a small coffee shop downtown, editing the script. The shop was crowded, filled with chatter and the sound of coffee machines, but Liam's world was the paper in front of him. As he scribbled notes, a woman at the next table leaned over. "You're working on a script, aren't you?" she asked, smiling. Liam nodded shyly. "Trying to." She introduced herself as Maria, an assistant producer who often worked with independent filmmakers. Her curiosity was genuine, and for the first time Liam found himself sharing a few details without fear. When Maria asked what had inspired him, Liam hesitated. Then he spoke quietly. "I met someone who reminded me that honesty matters more than anything." Her eyes lit up. "That's rare. Send me your script. I can't promise anything, but I'll read it." Liam sent it that night, his heart pounding. But the old fear returned quickly. He told himself not to expect much. Days passed. Silence. Liam's hope began to dim again, like a candle flickering in the wind. One evening, while staring at his silent phone, he thought of giving up completely. He even typed a message to Maria, telling her to ignore the script if it was not good enough. His finger hovered over the send button. Then, almost as if the universe was watching, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Maria. "Liam, I read your script. It is raw, it is emotional, and it needs work. But it has something rare. I think it deserves a chance. I want to show it to someone who might be interested." His heart raced. He could barely breathe. He typed back, "Thank you. Thank you so much." That night, he walked through the streets of Los Angeles with tears in his eyes. The city lights blurred, but he did not care. For the first time, the impossible seemed possible. But the next day, things grew complicated. Maria called and told him that the person she wanted to show the script to was cautious. "They like your idea," she said, "but they're afraid it's too risky for the market. They'll only look seriously if you can attach a known actor." Liam's chest sank. He had no contacts, no influence, no one who would risk their name on an unknown director. But then he remembered the man at the charity event, the man who had listened, the man who had said, "Don't lose honesty," Keanu Reeves. The thought alone made Liam's stomach twist. How could he ever reach someone like that again? He was just a struggling director with nothing to offer. And yet, the memory of that quiet smile gave him courage. Liam spent days writing a letter, not asking for fame, not begging for a role, but simply explaining what his story meant and how that one meeting had given him the strength to keep going. He did not even know if the letter would ever reach Keanu, but he mailed it anyway, his heart pounding as he dropped it into the box. Then, silence again. Weeks passed. Liam worked late shifts at a bookstore to pay rent, returning home exhausted but still rewriting his script whenever he could. He tried not to think about the letter, tried not to imagine the disappointment of never hearing back. But one rainy evening, when the sky was heavy and the city smelled of wet pavement, his phone rang. He almost ignored it, thinking it was another bill collector. But when he answered, the voice on the other end made him stop breathing. "Hi, Liam. It's Keanu." Liam nearly dropped the phone. The world around him fell silent. "I got your letter," Keanu continued. "Your story stayed with me. I'd like to meet again and talk about it." In that moment, Liam realized something he had always doubted. Sometimes, kindness does come back around. Sometimes the world gives you exactly the chance you prayed for. He stood frozen in the rain, tears mixing with the drops on his face, whispering to himself, "This is it. This is the beginning." The night before meeting Keanu again, Liam barely slept. He lay awake staring at the ceiling of his small apartment, his mind racing with questions. What if Keanu changed his mind? What if Liam said the wrong thing? What if this was the only chance he would ever get, and he ruined it? But beneath the fear, there was something stronger: hope. He remembered the way Keanu had listened at the charity event, the way he had spoken with patience and kindness. This was not about begging for help, Liam reminded himself. This was about telling the truth, about sharing a story that mattered. The next afternoon, they met at a quiet diner away from the crowded streets of Hollywood. When Liam walked in, he found Keanu sitting at a corner booth, wearing a simple jacket and sipping coffee. There was no entourage, no cameras, no signs of the fame that followed him everywhere. Just a man who looked up, smiled warmly, and said, "Liam, good to see you." Liam sat down, still nervous, but Keanu's calm presence slowly settled his shaking hands. After a few minutes of small talk, Keanu leaned forward and said, "Tell me about your script again. Not the pitch, not what you think people want to hear. Tell me what it means to you." Liam swallowed hard. Then he spoke from the deepest part of himself. He told Keanu how the story came from his own childhood, from losing his father when he was young. He described nights sitting alone in silence, wishing for answers, searching for peace. He explained how the story was about a boy's journey through grief and forgiveness, and how he wanted others who felt broken to know they were not alone. His voice cracked, but he kept going. He spoke of the people who had told him it was too heavy, too emotional, too unrealistic for audiences. But he also spoke of the fire inside him that refused to go out. When Liam finished, his eyes were wet with tears. He looked down, ashamed of showing so much emotion. But Keanu said quietly, "Don't hide that. That's the reason you need to tell this story. People feel it when it's real." The night before meeting Keanu again, Liam barely slept. He lay awake staring at the ceiling of his small apartment, his mind racing with questions. What if Keanu changed his mind? What if Liam said the wrong thing? What if this was the only chance he would ever get and he ruined it? But beneath the fear, there was something stronger: hope. He remembered the way Keanu had listened at the charity event, the way he had spoken with patience and kindness. This was not about begging for help, Liam reminded himself. This was about telling the truth, about sharing a story that mattered. The next afternoon, they met at a quiet diner away from the crowded streets of Hollywood. When Liam walked in, he found Keanu sitting at a corner booth, wearing a simple jacket and sipping coffee. There was no entourage, no cameras, no signs of the fame that followed him everywhere. Just a man who looked up, smiled warmly, and said, "Liam, good to see you." Liam sat down, still nervous, but Keanu's calm presence slowly settled his shaking hands. After a few minutes of small talk, Keanu leaned forward and said, "Tell me about your script again. Not the pitch, not what you think people want to hear. Tell me what it means to you." Liam swallowed hard, then he spoke from the deepest part of himself. He told Keanu how the story came from his own childhood, from losing his father when he was young. He described nights sitting alone in silence, wishing for answers, searching for peace. He explained how the story was about a boy's journey through grief and forgiveness, and how he wanted others who felt broken to know they were not alone. His voice cracked, but he kept going. He spoke of the people who had told him it was too heavy, too emotional, too unrealistic for audiences. But he also spoke of the fire inside him that refused to go out. When Liam finished, his eyes were wet with tears. He looked down, ashamed of showing so much emotion. But Keanu said quietly, "Don't hide that. That's the reason you need to tell this story. People feel it when it's real." Silence stretched between them, but it was not uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who understood something unspoken. Finally, Keanu asked, "What do you need from me?" Liam's heart pounded. He did not want to sound desperate, but he also knew this was the moment that could change everything. He said softly, "I need someone who believes in the story, someone who can help open the door." Keanu nodded slowly, thoughtful. Then he said something Liam would never forget. "I can't promise it will be easy, and I can't promise it will happen the way you dream. But I can promise I'll read the script myself, and if it moves me the way you just did, I'll stand by it." For Liam, those words were more than enough. In the days that followed, Keanu took the script home. Liam tried not to think about it, but every moment felt heavy. He replayed their conversation in his mind, terrified of what the outcome would be. Every time his phone buzzed, his chest tightened. A week later, Keanu called. His voice was calm, steady, but Liam could hear the weight of sincerity behind it. "Liam," Keanu said, "I finished your script. It's raw, and yes, it needs refining, but it has something most stories don't. It has a heart that refuses to give up, and that is worth fighting for." Liam sat frozen, barely able to breathe. "So," Keanu continued, "let's see if we can make it happen. I'll introduce you to a producer I trust. You'll have to fight for it, Liam. You'll have to defend your vision, but you won't be fighting alone." Those words hit Liam like thunder. For the first time, the dream he had chased for so long began to feel real. But with that promise came a warning. Keanu's voice grew serious. "Hollywood isn't kind, Liam. They'll test you. They'll try to break your spirit, and they'll try to change your story into something safer, something easier. If you want this, you have to be ready to hold on with everything you've got." Liam closed his eyes and whispered, "I'm ready." Yet deep inside, he did not know how hard the tests ahead would be. Doors would open, but they would not stay open easily. Liam was about to step into a world far more ruthless than he had ever imagined, and even Keanu's support would not shield him completely. Still, as he walked home that night, the city lights seemed brighter. He whispered to himself, "This is the moment I've been waiting for." And for the first time in years, Liam allowed himself to believe, really believe, that his story might finally find its way to the screen. The meeting with Keanu gave Liam courage he had never felt before, but courage alone was not enough to walk through the doors of Hollywood. Days later, he found himself standing outside a tall glass building in Los Angeles, clutching the only copy of his script he dared to carry. Inside, a producer named Daniel was waiting. He was someone Keanu trusted, but Liam had heard the stories. Daniel was known for being sharp, direct, and unwilling to waste time. As Liam stepped through the lobby, his heart pounded so loudly it drowned out the sound of his footsteps. When the elevator doors opened, he caught a glimpse of himself in the mirrored wall, nervous, pale, but with eyes burning with determination. He whispered under his breath, "Don't lose honesty." Inside the office, Daniel sat behind a wide desk covered in scripts. He did not stand to shake hands, only looked at Liam with a steady gaze. "I've read your work," he said. "There's something there. But it's unpolished. Too raw. Tell me, why should I risk my time on you?" The question cut straight through Liam. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then he took a breath and answered, not with rehearsed lines, but with truth. Because it's not just a story. It's a part of me. It's about loss, forgiveness, and the way people survive even when everything feels broken. I can't promise it's perfect, but I can promise it's real. Daniel leaned back, studying him. Then, slowly, he smiled, not warmly, but with a trace of respect. That's the first honest answer I've heard all week. All right, we'll give it a shot. But be warned, the road from script to screen is brutal. Investors want profit. Studios want safety. They'll push you to change what makes it yours. Can you stand your ground? Liam nodded, even though fear twisted inside him. The first step was a reading session with a small group of actors, arranged by Daniel. Liam sat in the back of the room as they read the dialogue aloud. At first, hearing his words spoken was surreal, almost magical. But then came the criticism. The pacing is too slow, one actor said. The emotions are heavy, maybe too heavy, another added. Liam sat frozen, his chest tightening. He wanted to run, to hide. But then he noticed Keanu sitting quietly in the corner. He had come without fanfare, without announcement, just to be there. When the session ended, Keanu walked over and placed a hand on Liam's shoulder. Remember, he said softly, criticism is not the end. It's a tool. Take what helps, leave what doesn't. That night, Liam rewrote the script, not by cutting its heart, but by sharpening its edges. He trimmed the lines that dragged, tightened the pacing, but held fiercely onto the core, the honesty that mattered most. Weeks passed, and slowly, the project began to gather attention. Maria, the assistant producer who had first believed in him, worked tirelessly to help him prepare pitches for investors. Some turned them away with cold smiles. Others listened politely, only to say it was too risky. Each rejection hurt, reopening old wounds of doubt. Liam would sit awake at night, staring at the city from his small window, wondering if he was foolish to keep fighting. But every time he thought of giving up, he remembered Keanu's words from their very first meeting. If you believe, then keep going. Then came a turning point. Daniel arranged a private reading for a small group of potential backers. Liam was terrified, his hands trembling as he set the script on the table. But halfway through the reading, something happened. One of the investors, a woman who had remained silent until then, leaned forward, her eyes glassy with tears. "My father passed away when I was young," she said softly. "I never thought I'd hear a story that captured what that felt like. Thank you." Her words struck Liam harder than any criticism ever could. In that moment, he realized something powerful. It was not about convincing everyone. It was about reaching the people who needed the story most. After the session, Daniel gave Liam a rare smile. "That's the reaction that sells films," he said. "Not applause, but silence, followed by truth." Still, the path was far from easy. For every person moved, there were 5 who doubted. And the closer they came to securing real support, the more pressure Liam faced to make compromises. "Can we change the ending to something happier?" one investor asked. "Maybe remove some of the darker parts," another suggested. Each suggestion felt like a blade cutting into the heart of his story. Liam wrestled with the choices late into the night, unsure of how much he could give up without losing himself. During one of those nights, he met Keanu again at the diner. Liam admitted, "I'm scared. They want me to change the story until it isn't mine anymore." Keanu stirred his coffee slowly, then said, "Compromise can polish a story, but it can also bury its soul. You need to decide which parts you can let go and which parts are your truth. If you lose your truth, you lose everything." Those words settled deep inside Liam. He knew then that no matter how much pressure came, he could not give up the heart of his story. The next meeting with investors would decide everything. Liam would have to walk into that room not just as a struggling dreamer, but as a storyteller ready to defend his vision. And though fear still gripped him, he whispered to himself, "This is not just my fight anymore. This story belongs to anyone who needs it." What Liam did not know was that the next meeting would not only test his courage, but also reveal just how far Keanu was willing to go to help him. The morning of the big investor meeting arrived with a nervous energy that made Liam's stomach twist into knots. He had rehearsed his words 100 times, rewritten his presentation until dawn, and still he felt unprepared. Hollywood was not just about stories, he realized. It was about power, money, and the endless struggle between heart and profit. When he walked into the tall conference room, he felt small. The long table was filled with people in sharp suits, their expressions unreadable. Maria sat at the far end, giving him an encouraging nod, while Daniel stood near the window, arms crossed, watching carefully. Liam placed his script on the table, his hands shaking. Before he could begin, one investor spoke. "We've read the script. It's emotional, but it's heavy. Audiences want escape, not sadness. Can you adjust the tone?" Another added, "The ending, too dark. No one will leave the theater smiling. We need something hopeful." Their words struck Liam hard, but he remembered Keanu's advice. Compromise can polish, but never bury the soul. Liam took a deep breath. "I understand your concerns," he said softly, "but this story is not about making people smile for a moment. It's about making them feel something real, something that stays long after they leave. If I change the heart of it, then it's not the story anymore." The room grew quiet. Some investors looked annoyed, others curious. One of them tapped a pen on the table and said, "Then why should we risk millions on a film that might not sell?" Liam's chest tightened. He was about to answer when the door opened. Everyone turned, and there, walking in quietly, was Keanu Reeves. The room shifted instantly. The investors straightened, their eyes widening. Keanu greeted them with his usual calm humility. "Sorry to interrupt," he said. "I just wanted to say something before you." He walked to the head of the table, his presence both gentle and unshakable. "I've read Liam's script. It's not just a film, it's a mirror. It shows pain, yes, but it also shows the courage to forgive and to heal. I've been in this industry long enough to know that most stories disappear as soon as the credits roll. This one doesn't. This one matters." The room was silent. Keanu continued, "If you're worried about risk, I'll make it simple. I believe in this story enough to attach my name to it. If Liam directs it, I'll be part of it." Gasps filled the room. Investors exchanged quick glances, whispering to one another. The weight of Keanu's words was undeniable. His reputation, built on years of humility and quiet strength, carried more power than any contract. Liam sat frozen, his heart pounding. He had not expected this. He had not even dared to hope for it. Finally, the lead investor spoke. "With you attached, Mr. Reeves, the project becomes far less risky. We'll move forward. But the budget will be tight. This is not a blockbuster. It's an art film. If you're willing to accept that, we'll fund it." Keanu nodded calmly. Quality matters more than size. If Liam stays true to the story, the rest will follow. Liam could hardly breathe. His dream, once a fragile spark, now had fire. After the meeting, as they walked outside into the California sun, Liam turned to Keanu, his voice breaking. "Why did you do that for me?" Keanu looked at him, his eyes steady and kind. "Because someone once gave me a chance when no one else would. I know what it feels like to carry a story inside you, and I know how hard it is to hold on when the world keeps telling you to let go. Sometimes, we all need someone to stand beside us." Those words sank deep into Liam's soul. But the journey was far from over. Getting funding was only the beginning. Now came the hardest part, turning the fragile dream into a living, breathing film. The days that followed were filled with chaos. Casting calls, location scouting, endless rewrites, and constant pressure from producers who still wanted to cut corners. Liam worked 18-hour days, living on coffee and scraps of food, his eyes red from sleepless nights. There were moments he thought he would break. Arguments erupted in rooms where everyone wanted control. Equipment failed, schedules collapsed. And through it all, Liam fought to protect the heart of his story. Keanu remained steady, showing up on set with patience and quiet encouragement. He never raised his voice, never demanded special treatment. He treated every crew member with respect, from the lighting assistant to the caterer. His presence kept the chaos from swallowing Liam whole. One night, after a particularly brutal day of filming, Liam sat on the curb outside the set, his head in his hands. The producers had just demanded he cut a scene that meant everything to him, saying it was too long, too expensive. Keanu walked out and sat beside him. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Keanu said, "You look like the boy in your story. Lost, but still searching." Liam laughed bitterly. "Maybe I am. Maybe I don't belong here. Maybe they were right all along." Keanu shook his head. "You belong here because you care. Don't let exhaustion steal that from you. Stories worth telling always cost something. The question is, are you willing to pay the price?" Liam looked up, the streetlights casting a soft glow on Keanu's calm face. And in that moment, Liam knew the answer. Yes, he would pay the price. The film was still far from finished, and the battles were only beginning. But Liam was no longer just a struggling dreamer. He was a director standing in the storm, and for the first time, he believed he could weather it. The weeks of filming tested Liam in ways he had never imagined. Every day began before sunrise and ended long after midnight. The crew grew restless, the budget ran thinner than expected, and pressure weighed heavy from every side. But Liam held on to one truth: this story was worth the fight. Still, doubt crept in like a shadow. During one scene, the actors struggled with the emotions Liam had written. The dialogue felt flat, the energy drained, and the producers whispered behind his back that maybe he wasn't ready to direct. Liam stood frozen on set, the cameras waiting, the crew frustrated. His throat tightened, and for a moment he thought of walking away. But then Keanu, who was playing a supporting role in the film, quietly walked over. He leaned in and said softly, "Remember what you told me, that this story comes from your heart. Don't hide it. Show them. Guide them." With shaking hands, Liam stepped onto the set. He asked the actors to stop reading the lines and instead to sit with him in silence. "Forget the script for a moment," he said. "Just remember a time when you lost someone, or when you felt you weren't enough. Hold on to that feeling, and then speak." When the cameras rolled again, something shifted. The words carried weight. The silence between them carried truth. The crew fell silent, watching with tears in their eyes. When the scene ended, no one spoke for a long moment. Even the producers had nothing to say. Later that night, one of the actors approached Liam with tears still shining in her eyes. "No director has ever asked me to be that honest," she whispered. "Thank you." Those words gave Liam strength to keep going. Yet new challenges appeared. Halfway through the shoot, a major investor pulled funding, leaving the production in crisis. Panic spread across the team. Without the money, everything would shut down. Liam sat in the production office, his head in his hands, feeling the dream slipping through his fingers. That was when Keanu walked in. He closed the door behind him and said simply, "How much do you need to finish?" Liam looked up, stunned. "Too much. I can't ask you." But Keanu raised a hand. "You didn't ask. I'm offering. I believe in this story, and I believe in you. Let me help." Liam's voice cracked. "Why would you do that? You've already done more than anyone could ever ask." Keanu's eyes softened. Because this isn't just your story anymore. It belongs to everyone who will see themselves in it. And I don't want them to lose it because of money. True to his word, Keanu helped cover the gap, not with grand announcements, but quietly, humbly, never asking for credit. The crew never knew the full truth, but Liam did, and he carried that gratitude with him like a shield. As the chute pushed forward, Liam began to change. He no longer stood hunched and uncertain. He walked with steady steps, speaking with a voice that carried both authority and compassion. He listened to his crew, respected their ideas, but never wavered on the heart of the story. He had become not just a dreamer, but a leader. Finally, after months of exhaustion and struggle, the last scene was filmed. When the director called, "That's a wrap," cheers filled the set. Liam stood in the middle of it all, too overwhelmed to speak. He had survived the storm. But the journey was not over. Now came the part he feared most, showing the film to the world. The premiere was held in a small theater downtown. Liam sat in the back row, his palms sweating, his heart pounding so hard it hurt. He could barely look at the screen as the film began. Every sound, every cut, every pause felt like a test of his worth. But as the story unfolded, something happened. The audience grew quiet. Not the restless kind of quiet, but the deep silence of people holding their breath. Liam saw tears glistening in the dark, heard soft sniffles echo through the room. And when the credits rolled, there was no quick applause. Instead, there was a moment of stillness, then a wave of clapping that grew louder and louder until the room shook with it. People stood, wiping their faces, cheering through tears. Liam sat frozen, unable to move. Maria leaned toward him, her voice shaking. "Do you see it? You did it. You touched them." Keanu, sitting beside him, leaned over with a quiet smile. "I told you, honesty matters." Liam covered his face with his hands, tears streaming down. For years he had carried rejection, doubt, and fear. But in that moment, all of it faded, replaced by something he had only dreamed of: connection. After the screening, people came up to him, strangers with trembling voices. "This story helped me remember my father. I felt like you were telling my story. Thank you for making me feel less alone." Every word pierced Liam's heart in the best way possible. That night, walking out into the cool air, Liam looked up at the stars and whispered, "It was worth it. Every fight, every tear. It was worth it." But as he stood there, feeling the weight of his dream finally come alive, he knew the journey wasn't ending. It was only the beginning. The film was out in the world now, and the world was about to respond in ways he could never predict. The morning after the premiere, Liam woke up to a flood of messages on his phone. Friends he had not spoken to in years reached out with congratulations. Strangers from across the world were posting about the film online. Some wrote long, emotional letters, telling him how the story had reminded them of their own pain, their own healing. Others simply wrote, "Thank you for making me feel seen." But the world of film is never simple. Along with praise came criticism. Some reviewers called it too heavy. Others said it would never break into the mainstream. For a moment, Liam felt the old fear returning. He scrolled through the comments until his chest tightened. Then he remembered the audience at the premiere, the tears, the silence, the way people held each other when the credits rolled. That was the truth, and no review could take it away. The film began to spread quietly, not through giant billboards or flashy ads, but through word of mouth. One person told another, and then another. Small theaters across the country requested screenings. People brought their families, their friends, sometimes even their children, because they felt the story was one worth sharing. Soon, Liam found himself invited to film festivals. He traveled with Maria and Daniel, sitting in rooms filled with filmmakers he had once only admired from afar. He was still nervous, still uncertain, but whenever he doubted himself, he thought of the words Keanu had given him: "Don't lose honesty." At one festival, after the film played, a young boy approached Liam. His eyes were red from crying, but his voice was steady. "My dad passed away last year," he said. "Your film made me feel like I wasn't the only one. Thank you." Liam knelt down, tears filling his eyes, and whispered, "That's why I made it. For you." It was in that moment that Liam truly understood. This was never about fame, money, or recognition. It was about reaching even one person who needed the story. And if it could do that, then everything had been worth it. Months later, the film was nominated for an award. Liam sat in the audience, nervous and trembling, dressed in a suit that still felt too big for him. When his name was called, he stood in shock. People clapped, the lights flashed, and he walked to the stage with unsteady steps. He held the award in his hands, heavy and shining, but when he spoke into the microphone, his words were simple. "This doesn't belong to me alone. It belongs to everyone who believed when I didn't. To Maria, who read my script when no one else would. To Daniel, who gave me a chance. And most of all, to Keanu Reeves, who reminded me that honesty is stronger than fear. Without him, none of this would have been possible." The audience rose in applause, and Liam saw Keanu in the crowd, clapping with his usual calm smile, never trying to take the spotlight, always standing quietly in the background. After the ceremony, Liam walked outside into the night air. He found Keanu waiting, leaning against a wall away from the noise. Liam held up the award and said softly, "This is yours too." Keanu shook his head. "No, it's yours. I just reminded you of what you already had inside." Liam's throat tightened. "I'll never be able to thank you enough." Keanu smiled, his eyes reflecting the city lights. "Then don't. Just keep telling stories that matter. That's thanks enough." And with that, they stood together in silence, not needing any more words. From that day on, Liam's career began to grow. He directed more films, each one filled with honesty, humility, and heart. He never forgot where he came from, and he never let the noise of Hollywood drown out the truth. Whenever young filmmakers came to him with fear in their eyes, he repeated the same words Keanu had once told him: "Don't let the world convince you your story doesn't matter." Years later, when people asked Liam what had changed his life, he always gave the same answer: one meeting with a kind man who chose to listen. And that single meeting had sparked everything: the courage, the story, the dream that refused to die.